Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: thousands of weapon parts in U.S. weapon systems rely on minerals controlled by China. Could this put U.S. defense readiness at risk? A look at the key challenge facing the Pentagon and weapons makers. China is quietly fixing banned Nvidia AI chips, raising questions about whether U.S. export rules are actually working. We take a closer look at the situation. Washington ramping up pressure on India to stop buying Russian oil. A top aide to President Trump is slamming India's refusal to change course.
He said very clearly that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia.
And over 50 members of Canadian Parliament speaking out against Beijing's persecution of Falun Gong. Bomb threats are targeting Shen Yun performances across Canada.
Canada must counter this interference and stand up for freedom, faith, and democracy at home and abroad.
Despite a trade truce between the U.S. and China since May and some easing of rare earth export restrictions, the relief doesn't appear to extend to U.S. defense firms. China still controls critical minerals essential to U.S. defense. Beijing currently supplies about 90% of the world's rare earths. It also dominates the production of other key minerals like germanium, gallium, and antimony. All of these are essential for modern weapons. According to Govini, a defense analytics firm, nearly every supply chain for critical minerals used by the Pentagon involves at least one Chinese supplier. In fact, more than 80,000 components found in U.S. weapon systems rely on minerals now under Chinese export controls. The industry is starting to feel the strain. From missiles and fighter jets to radar systems and drones, Western defense manufacturers are reporting delays and disruptions. The Wall Street Journal says a drone parts company in New Hampshire was recently asked by its Chinese magnet supplier to submit detailed drawings, product photos, and even a list of its buyers. These forms were reportedly issued by the Chinese regime. The company refused, and as a result, magnet shipments were halted. With Beijing tightening its grip, some manufacturers are now facing production slowdowns and delivery delays. Inventories are also dwindling, with some dropping to dangerously low levels. Finding alternative suppliers is not easy. Building domestic supply chains or developing substitute materials will take time. For now, the Pentagon's reliance on Chinese minerals remains a strategic vulnerability. Solutions are still being explored. The U.S. and China wrapped up their third round of trade talks in recent days in Stockholm, Sweden. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer sounded a cautiously optimistic note on securing the flow of rare earth magnets controlled by Beijing.
That China has put a global control on the world, and so for the United States, we're focused on making sure that the flow of magnets from China to the United States and the adjacent supply chain can flow as freely as it did before the control. And I'd say we're about halfway there.
According to Greer, if U.S. and China can't resolve the critical issues on the table, tariff levels on Chinese goods could return to 80%. President Donald Trump is set to make the final call on whether to maintain the tariff truce, which expires on August 12th. A new business trend in China is raising questions about the U.S. chip export ban. Chinese companies are now quietly repairing Nvidia's high-end AI chips, the very ones Washington aims to keep out. That's despite U.S. rules designed to keep these advanced chips out of China. But the growing repair trade suggests those rules may not be working as intended. Reuters recently reported that dozens of companies in China are offering repairs for large batches of Nvidia's H100 and A100 chips. These chips are designed to power large-scale AI training, the technology behind systems like ChatGPT. The tricky part is these chips shouldn't be in China at all. They were banned from being sold there back in 2022. One Chinese firm says it repairs up to 500 chips a month, and about a dozen others do the same all year long, adding up to tens of thousands of chips being repaired annually. Most of the damaged chips come from years of heavy use. One company said demand has grown so high they opened a second business just to handle repairs. Another firm that used to rent out AI chips has shifted entirely to repairs, now fixing around 200 chips a month. An Nvidia spokesperson says not only are these chips banned from export to China, but the company is also prohibited from servicing them there. Reports from the Wall Street Journal point to widespread smuggling of banned AI chips into the country. Nvidia's high-end AI chips are still making their way into China through a growing underground network. Some are smuggled by people flying from places like Singapore. That includes students who are paid to carry chips in their luggage. Meanwhile, dozens of Chinese sellers openly advertise the chips online. Even though Nvidia now offers lower-end chips that comply with U.S. restrictions, many Chinese customers prefer the banned models, especially for AI training. A top aide to President Trump slammed India on Sunday for buying oil from Russia. This marks one of the administration's strongest criticisms yet of a key Indo-Pacific partner. Last week, Trump imposed a 25% tariff on India for buying cheap oil from Russia. He warned that additional penalties could follow if India doesn't change course.
He said very clearly that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia. People will be shocked to learn that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil. That's an astonishing fact. India portrays itself as being one of our closest friends in the world, but they don't accept our products.
India imports over 1/3 of its oil from Russia. It's the second largest buyer of Russian oil after China. Indian officials said Saturday they would continue buying oil from Russia despite Trump's warning.
We need to get real about dealing with the financing of this war. So President Trump, all options are on the table to deal diplomatically, financially, and otherwise with the ongoing war in Ukraine so we can achieve peace.
90% of India's energy depends on imports. One alternative source is OPEC, though they sell oil to Asian countries at higher prices. OPEC is a group of top oil producers that work together to manage global oil supply and prices. China is pushing back after the U.S. urged it to stop buying oil from Russia and Iran. On social media platform X, Beijing posted that it's prioritizing its own energy needs and national interests. This follows trade talks last week. During the meeting, U.S. officials warned those oil sales fund Russia's war in Ukraine and support Iran's militant groups. China remains a top buyer, importing over 1.3 million barrels of Russian oil and more than 1 million barrels of Iranian oil each day. That's according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Despite U.S. sanctions on Russian and Iranian crude, China remains a top buyer of their oil. Over 50 Canadian members of parliament have signed a joint statement condemning the Chinese Communist Party's escalating repression of Falun Gong practitioners, a Buddhist meditation school both inside China and abroad. Here's the story.
This year marks the 26th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party's campaign to suppress Falun Gong. In a new show of support, 53 Canadian members of parliament signed a joint declaration denouncing the regime's persecution, including its expanding efforts overseas.
Canada must counter this interference and stand up for freedom, faith, and democracy at home and abroad.
There is a foreign agent registry now in Canada, and so the government needs to actually stop these foreign actors from the Beijing Communist Party who are operating on Canadian soil and uttering these threats against peaceful performances that are taking place here in Canada. So we call on that.
Canada's Royal Canadian Mounted Police and local police are investigating bomb threats targeting Shen Yun performances in several cities. Some of the threats were traced to sources linked to China.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police are conducting criminal investigations into the threats, calling them criminal acts. They're also working with police agencies in other countries to investigate and monitor the Chinese regime's activities. We're also calling on the government to take stronger action to address this blatant transnational repression.
Globally, concerns are mounting over the CCP's transnational repression. More individuals, organizations, and governments are calling for an end to the regime's human rights abuses. At the 2025 G7 summit, leaders issued a joint statement condemning transnational repression and pledged to work together to counter it. NTD News, Canada.
Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a peaceful meditation practice based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. The Chinese regime began persecuting the group in 1999. Canada has renewed funding for a scholar exchange program with China. To join the program, Chinese applicants must first check a political box, loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. In a previous interview with the Epoch Times, human rights lawyer David Matas said that while not everyone coming from China is involved in malign activities, those who must meet ideological requirements to qualify could be pressured to act as spies. Under the exchange, Canada sponsors Chinese scholars to conduct research at Canadian universities for up to a year. In return, Beijing funds Canadian scholars to study in China. The scholarships are administered by China's Scholarship Council, or CSC. The state-run agency also oversees similar exchange programs here in the U.S. A 2020 study found that about 18% of Chinese students studying in the U.S. receive funding from the CSC. America is the second most popular destination for millionaires leaving their home countries. More than 10,000 of those moving to the U.S. are Chinese. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pozdar has more.
The United States is a dream choice for global millionaires leaving their current primary residence. That's according to the 2025 Henley Private Wealth Migration Report, which estimates the number of millionaires moving to different countries this year. The United States came in second place as the favorite new home for emigrating millionaires, behind the United Arab Emirates in the top spot and Italy in third place. In total, the US is expected to receive 7,500 new millionaires. Most are set to go to the UAE, where Dubai is located, with almost 10,000. Another 3,600 are expected to move to Italy by the end of this year. But where are these wealthy people coming from and choosing to leave in search of a new home? An expert told Business Insider that most of them are from the UK, China, and India. Great Britain is expected to lose over 16,000 millionaires, followed by China with 7,800 and India with 3,500. According to the report, millionaires are usually among the first people to relocate when, quote, conditions deteriorate. This may indicate future economic risks in those countries. In April, President Trump introduced the Golden Visa. It gives people a path to residency and citizenship after making an investment in the U.S. worth at least $5 million. This might raise the number of millionaires moving to America in 2025. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Lockdown fears are spreading in China. A fever outbreak is causing concern in South China. Chikungunya fever is a viral disease mainly transmitted by mosquitoes. Its symptoms include fever, severe joint pain, muscle pain, headache, fatigue, and rash. Here's the latest.
Chinese authorities have adopted similar control measures to those they adopted during the COVID-19 pandemic, triggering public fear of a return of citywide lockdowns. As of July 31st, there were more than 6,000 confirmed cases in Foshan City in Guangdong province. There's no specific antiviral treatment for chikungunya. Deaths from the disease are rare, but they do occur, especially among vulnerable populations, such as those with underlying health conditions. Authorities issued an urgent nationwide notice for diagnosis and treatment plans for the outbreak. They said, quote, quarantine measures must be taken for suspected and confirmed cases.
Coming up, a Chinese woman is facing charges under Australia's foreign interference laws. She is accused of spying on a Buddhist group in Australia on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party.
Foreign interference is a serious crime that undermines democracy and social cohesion.
Joint drills near Japan, China and Russia flexing military muscle close to a key U.S. ally in the Indo-Pacific. The exercises include artillery fire and anti-submarine drills. And over in U.S. show business, the landmark merger between Skydance and Paramount is making waves. Could this deal give the Chinese Communist Party more influence? We've got an expert weighing in. That and more in just a minute here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Australia is taking action. A Chinese woman has been charged under Australia's foreign interference laws. She's accused of spying on a Canberra-based Buddhist group on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Let's zoom in.
This is the first time the AFP has charged a person with foreign interference that allegedly involves targeting members of the Australian community. Foreign interference is a serious crime that undermines democracy and social cohesion.
The woman
woman is a permanent resident of Australia. She was arrested by federal police on Saturday and appeared in court today. She's facing 1 count of reckless foreign interference. If convicted, she could face up to 15 years in prison. The charges follow Operation Autumn Shield, launched by the Australian Federal Police in March. Officers raided several homes in Canberra, seizing electronic devices and materials now being forensically examined. Authorities say the case sends a clear message. Foreign interference targeting diaspora communities won't be tolerated.
The Buddhist group targeted by the Chinese woman is the Canberra branch of Guanyin Sita. Italian police have arrested 13 people in a nationwide sweep targeting Chinese mafia groups. They're accused of drug trafficking, sex exploitation, and aggravated robbery. Here's a closer look.
Police in Italy released video of an operation they said on Monday involved the arrests of 13 people in a nationwide sweep targeting Chinese mafia groups. Those arrested faced charges including drug dealing, sex trafficking, and aggravated robbery. An official said raids were conducted in 25 provinces, including Milan, Rome, and Florence. Police noted the suspects have a stronger foothold in parts of Italy with more Chinese residents. Police said the gang's crimes tend to target fellow Chinese. In April, a senior figure in the Chinese underworld and a companion were shot dead in Rome in what police suspected was part of a turf war within Chinese criminal networks in Italy.
Over in the Indo-Pacific, the Chinese and Russian navies held joint drills in the Sea of Japan over the weekend. That's the stretch of water between the Korean peninsula and Japan's west coast. The drills started just 2 days after verbal tensions escalated between President Trump and a former Russian president. NTD's Flora Hua brings us the report.
A Russian news agency reported that the drills would include firing artillery, anti-submarine and air defense practice missions, and joint search and rescue missions. A large Russian anti-submarine ship and 2 Chinese destroyers are taking part in the exercises. The drills are scheduled to run until Tuesday. While the Chinese and Russian militaries enhance their ties, tensions between Washington and Moscow are escalating. On Thursday, the former president of Russia warned that President Trump should remember that Moscow possessed Soviet-era nuclear capabilities. The next day, President Trump said that he had ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in, quote, the appropriate regions in response to the former Russia leader's provocation. Flora Hua, NTD News.
In U.S. entertainment news, a lot of attention is on the recent merger between Skydance and Paramount. Cybersecurity expert Rex Lee has spotted some connections to China in the deal. We caught up with him earlier to find out more.
The big concern with Skydance is Skydance was one of the largest film production companies in the world. They became a behemoth along with Paramount. So now when you have the Paramount Skydance acquisition, so goes all of the relationships within Skydance. And all of those relationships with Chinese media investment companies that include Tencent, again, is a big one, Alibaba Pictures, and other companies that are producing or investing, who were investing in U.S. film production. It's not that they were investing in Chinese film production and then forming partnerships for distribution to U.S. markets. That's part of it. But these companies were directly financing big movies like Mission Impossible, Top Gun, and so forth. Some of the other media companies from China that are involved in this is Fosun Pictures, Hua Media, if I got that right, and Shanghai Film Group. So they're bringing, all of this comes with it. And these companies are major investors, Terminator, Dark Fate, Star Trek. So you're looking at, these are the biggest blockbuster movies that they have the money to produce. So along comes with that influence indirectly by the CCP, whether it's unspoken self-censorship on certain topics like genocide or slave labor, or freedom of the press regarding markets in China or anywhere else around the world. There's going to be self-censorship on some of these topics, and it's unspoken. because they know if they do speak out against this, they can be marginalized or careers can be lost as well. We've actually seen famous actors apologize for acknowledging Taiwan's independence in the past, and or the GM of the Houston Rockets who had to apologize for his support of freedom of the press in Hong Kong and so forth, or somebody speaks out against COVID. I'll give you a great example of this. Maverick Top Gun was a great sequel. I actually loved the movie. Unlike the first movie, Russia was identified as the adversary throughout the movie. It starts off with the conflict between Navy jet fighter pilots and Russian MiG pilots. That's how the movie starts off, and it ends with a battle between them as well. Well, in the new movie, whoever the enemy was, they were never identified. Were they North Korean? Were they Iranian? Were they Russian? Were they China? You know, it's as if the director said, well, we can't name an adversary, but that's the type of self-censorship that we're going to see in movies going forward. This could actually impact content that we could stream today, like Paramount Plus has content on there like Homeland that clearly identifies Iran as an adversary, plus China, Russia. If you ever watch the whole series, well, content like that could be taken down.
Given how interconnected these two economies are, the U.S. and China, and also as we're seeing with all these different companies and the mergers and their relationships and, you know, the companies under them, what would be the solution here?
Provisions in the merger agreement from the government could institute oversight and say, look, you can edit this content all you want to in Chinese markets. We don't have a problem with that. Or any other markets that where the government may allow censorship to happen. But if a movie like Maverick Top Gun 2 is produced, they could, in essence, have two versions where in the US version, we can show who our adversaries are without them being some nebulous adversary. And that content can be put onto streaming platforms for the US. But in this merger, there were no provisions addressing any of these issues.
A lot at stake for sure. Rex Lee, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.